If you're like me, you spend a lot of time online, and so you've probably seen there's a lot of buzz going on in regards to sepsis. You see, here lately, the terminology we use to define sepsis has changed. This came on the heels of a paper that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. This paper is the result of a consensus panel of experts that came together. They looked at 92 different systematic reviews and meta-analyses. They used the Delphi process and came to the conclusion that we need to change the way we talk about sepsis. We need to change our approach if we want to A, have a better predictive indicator of sepsis mortality, and B, impact changes on survivability on our patients. After these publications were made, 31 international societies have endorsed them, including the American Thoracic Society. This is the third time that definitions have changed for sepsis. The first was in 1993, then in 2002, and now 2016. Because it's the third time, most people are calling this Sepsis 3. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at Sepsis 3. Basically, we now think about sepsis as organ failures stemming from a dysregulated host response to infection. We've learned a lot in the last several years about sepsis through study. For example, we see sepsis as a balance between inflammatory and anti-inflammatory signaling, between the innate and adaptive immune response. And then we know things like apoptosis, oxidative metabolism, and an individual's kinetic response are all at play. So let's take a look at the old definition. Traditionally, we've thought of sepsis as a cascade, but things have changed. We've now eliminated the term SIRS, and that's because so many things can cause inflammation of the body that don't have to do with infection. And we want to be really intentional now with the host response to infection. We've also deleted the term severe sepsis because we thought it was really redundant. Severe sepsis and septic shock both involve organ failures. The term that's come in to replace the term SIRS is now Q-SOFA. So you might be wondering, what is this Q-SOFA? Well, here's a sofa. What do y'all think of it? Oh, hey Amber, what's up?
Hey, not much. I'm just checking out this new sofa you got here.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. What do you think?
I like it. In fact, it's pretty comfortable. So much so, I've seen the residents hop up on it. In fact, they like it. Comfortable, simple, easy to use. You need 3 things. Now they know you need a GCS less than 15, a systolic less than 100, and a respiratory rate greater than 22.
Exactly. And if you have 2 out of 3 of these in a patient with a known or suspected infection, you're worried about
sepsis. Simple as that. I think that's all.
That's it.
I'm out of here.
Later.
Bye.
Now that we've learned all about the Q-SOFA, let's talk about the changes to the term septic shock. I find them easy to remember because there's 3 changes, and this whole thing is called Sepsis 3. The first is that your patient is requiring vasopressors to keep their mean arterial pressure greater than 65. The second is that their serum lactate level is greater than 2. And finally, we want to make sure that the cause of their shock is not from hypovolemia. If your patient meets all 3 of these criteria, then they meet the definition for septic shock, provided they have an infection as their source. So we can now say goodbye to the terms SIRS and severe sepsis. Amber, would you join me? We're going to take a moment of silence for SIRS and severe sepsis.
Cheer up, Graham. There's good news. In fact, things are getting better. You know why? JAMA's published a new article. In fact, there's an algorithm to help you in the management of sepsis.
Yeah, I've heard of that algorithm. In fact, let's take a look at it right now. In front of me, we have our sepsis algorithm. As we look at the top, you can see it begins with the Q-SOFA score you've been hearing about. Rolling down, if the patient's Q-SOFA score is positive on screen, now we need to be looking for signs of organ dysfunction. You can use the standard SOFA score to look for this. And if there's an increase of 2 from baseline, now we're really worried about sepsis and end organ damage. Rolling up again to the bottom of our algorithm, we see at this point we need to intervene. We're going to be using IV fluids and vasopressors if needed to keep the MAP greater than 65 and checking a lactate level. If the lactate level is greater than 2 and vasopressors are needed, then we have diagnosed septic shock. Septic shock carries up to a 40% mortality rate in hospitalized patients. So all these measures we're talking about today are done to try to avoid septic shock. All right, so in conclusion, what have we learned? Well, first, we're no longer using the term SIRS. It's too nonspecific, and we're substituting Q-SOFA. So if you have a patient in the hospital who has positive infection or you suspect an infection, you want to apply the Q-SOFA screen. If it's greater than 2, well, we need to think about organ failures and escalating care. This might involve moving them to a critical care unit, starting antibiotics, or giving them more IV fluids. We've also talked about the new definition of septic shock. We said that lactate is now greater than 2, vasopressors to keep MAP greater than 65, and we have to rule out hypovolemia as the cause of shock. I'm glad you tuned in today. Thank you for watching. See you next time.